He's Gary Myers. He's a writer for The Athletic. Has a terrific column out about the state of Eli Manning, his situation with the Giants. He's also the author of the book, How About Them Cowboys? And Gary joins me here on the show. Gary, one of the sentences that jumped off the page when I was reading your column about Eli Manning was that you looked at this past draft, and forgive me if I'm phrasing it wrong, a franchise-changing mistake drafting Saquon Barkley over Sam Darnold. My only issue with that is I don't really know for sure that Sam Darnold is a great quarterback. What do you think?
Well, Chris, I think we saw enough from Darnold after he came back from the foot injury in the last month to assume with the right coaching next year that he's ready to take a big leap forward. And, you know, as far as the Giants are concerned, it was the first time they were picking in the top 5 since 2004. It happened to be in one of the best quarterback drafts, at least going into it, that we thought the NFL had in a long time. And the Giants had a quarterback who turned 38 years old yesterday. And you just don't get that many opportunities to take elite quarterbacks. And even though Saquon Barkley was clearly the best player in the draft, he plays a position that has a short shelf life in the NFL. And as great as he was this year, the Giants won 5 games. And as great as he'll be next year, if Eli Manning is the quarterback, they won't win more than 5 games. So my feeling is that in order to set the franchise up for the future, even though there might not have been the instant gratification this year, that they had to take the quarterback.
Okay, but if they draft, let's say, Dwayne Haskins with that top 10 pick this year, and they bring Manning back for another year, and it turns out Haskins can play, is it still a mistake?
Well, then with the benefit of, another year of results, we can tell. I'm not sure that, it's very early in the process with Haskins now to say where he would rank versus, say, Mayfield and Darnold and Allen and Rosen from last year. I mean, Lamar Jackson's the only one of the 5 who picked in the first round who's in the playoffs this year, but nobody had him as a top 10 pick. So we'll limit it to the 4 guys that were picked in the top 10. Chris, at this point, I'm not sure where Haskins would have ranked in among those players. Now, it could turn out by the time the draft comes around the end of April that scouts will be saying, well, if Haskins was in that group, he would have been the first player picked. We just don't know that right now. So to me, listen, the other part about it is we don't even know, first of all, if the Giants like Haskins. And secondly, they're picking 6th. The top 5 teams are not going to take a quarterback, but somebody can easily jump over the Giants to get Haskins. If the Giants really like him, they might not get him at 6. And I don't know that the Giants are in a position where they feel they can give up quality draft choices to move up for a quarterback. So they might not get him anyhow.
Okay, so there is no, as we just point out, natural successor to Eli Manning. At this point, we don't know if they're even going to draft a quarterback. They probably will, but we don't know yet. Kyle Lauletta doesn't seem like he's the natural successor to Eli Manning. Why is it even a discussion within the Giants about bringing Eli Manning back?
Well, as Dave Gettleman said the other day, he doesn't know what the field is going to be in this offseason, which means is Nick Foles going to be available? We think he is. Joe Flacco, do they consider Flacco, who is, and I termed him kind of a younger version of Manning at this point in his career, he'll likely get cut by the Ravens, but is that really an upgrade? Do they like Teddy Bridgewater because Pat Shermer was around him for a couple of years in Minnesota, although Bridgewater didn't play then because he was hurt? Do they like him enough to kind of bring him in? And I wouldn't even call him a transition quarterback at that point because he's a young guy. So I think that before they commit to Eli, they want to see what's out there. But realistically, when you're trying to project, Chris, what's going to happen here, I think Eli will be back. I think they'll renegotiate his contract or restructure his contract because his cap hit is about $23 million this year. So they might add a year onto it just for cap purposes and keep him around. Even if they're able to get, Haskins or a Drew Lock or a Daniel Jones, they might want to keep Eli in the role that Kurt Warner played for Eli in 2004. So, as we're sitting here on what is today, January the 4th, my guess would be that Eli would be back in some role next year, likely as the starter at least the beginning of the season, unless Foles becomes available and the Giants are in love with him. Because you have to remember also the connection between Shermer and Foles is that Shermer was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia in 2013 when Foles had that year where he threw 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So I know he has a great, affinity for Nick Foles. That's the one I would keep an eye on because I'm pretty sure he's going to be a free agent. The Eagles aren't going to want to pay him $20 million, and it's a mutual option so that even if the Eagles pick up the option, Foles can buy his way out for $2 million and try to get a much bigger contract on a team that he'll be the unquestioned starter.
Talking to Gary Myers, a writer for The Athletic. He's the author of the new book, How About Them Cowboys, available everywhere. Let's talk about the Cowboys for a minute, Gary. Going into this playoff game, they're home. They've got a great running back. They've got a high-level defense. They just got a new star wide receiver. They're playing the Seahawks. Anything at stake in a game like this for Jason Garrett?
Yeah, everybody has assumed at this point that Garrett will be back. Next year's the last year of his contract, and that he'll get an extension. But I'll tell you what, I'm not completely sold on that. That if the Cowboys were to lose tomorrow night, and if it was a really bad loss where the offense just completely shuts down, which is possible, I don't think it's a given that a wild card loss at home guarantees that he'll be back next year. Now, granted, it's going to be difficult to fire a guy after he wins 10 games and wins his second division title in 3 years. But the Cowboys, I think at this point, I think the Cowboys have to evaluate Garrett on postseason success. It's been 23 years since they were in the Super Bowl, and that's the last one they won, obviously. And I know in researching this book and spending 5 hours over 3 different interview sessions with Jerry Jones, how much it irritates him and aggravates him that it's been such a long time since they've been in the Super Bowl. And if Garrett can't get this team 2 or 3 rounds deep into the playoffs, he might feel he's taken them as far as he can, and it's time for a change. I can't say I think that's likely, but I think it's on the table for sure.
Always great to talk to you, Gary. I appreciate the time.
All right, Chris. Take care. Thanks very much.
That's Gary Myers, the writer for The Athletic. His new book is called How About Them Cowboys, which is available everywhere.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.